Okay, we'll call the Public Works and Planning Committee to order. All roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Here.
Commissioner Nipper?
Here.
Commissioner Piercy?
Here.
Commissioner Sereno?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Here.
Approve the minutes.
Approve amendments to last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Highway Department.
Good evening, sirs. Miss Becky. How are y'all this evening? Good. I hopefully put everybody a little packet there at your tablets. Highway Commission met yesterday morning and approved this budget amendment of moving $350,000 from our fund-to-ending balance into our highway equipment. We are doing that so that we can purchase us a new 10-foot asphalt paver off the state contract. We're not even having to bid it. The state's redone and put some heavier equipment on the contract, which makes it easier for all the highway departments not having to spend the money on bidding and trying to spec. So that's what this is for. Again, it's a $350,000 decrease to funded balance with an increase to the highway equipment. The very last sheet in your packet just shows how we finished up fiscal year 2017-18, shows you what we put into fund balance. So we're still looking good as to even covering, removing this $350. We still have money that we were able to put back in.
Do you have any expectations for this 1.8 million remaining? Do y'all have a wish list that's evolving, or?
We always have a wish list, but what helped this is this asphalt paver was actually on next year's. We're kind of caught up on what our projections are of our wish list for this year, with the cost of steel and everything going up, and looking at. We didn't even look at this until we knew how much money we put back in, and we saw that we were in decent shape, and so we went, okay, let's go ahead and bump the asphalt paver up, because the old one we are replacing is getting harder to get screeds and parts for it, because oh, I'm sorry, I can't think of the name of it, but this one we are purchasing is a Rotec. It is built in Chattanooga. The other one we had to send off, and I'm actually now already 6 weeks waiting on a part for the other paver, and that would have us down. So we've been paving with our little 8-foot paver. Now that we have this money, we're able to go in and possibly, replace the 10-foot paver that we've had. And so we're wanting to go ahead and do this, and since we ended to the good. But as of right now, we don't have anything else earmarked for the other money that was put back in fund balance, but that doesn't, knock on wood, hopefully nothing happens, but we do have money if need be, if something needed to be replaced. Any other questions?
Knowing how effective your department is and your road board approves this, I'm going to make a motion to approve this as written.
Second.
Made and seconded.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Nipper?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
All right, I appreciate it. And just to go on record also, this allows the highway department to keep good running equipment for our men to maintain the great roads that we do have in Rutherford County. And if we keep them good working equipment, it keeps their morale up. And so we appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Building code.
Hello. And I apologize, I only brought July's monthly report. I didn't bring June's, but it is available on our website if everybody wants to go back and look at it. And I will say that we ended out the year with 3395 total permits, which was about 30 more than the year before. So we're just kind of clipping along at the same pace for the whole year. Anyway, for the month of July, we issued 278 permits, 64 of which were single-family dwellings, for a total revenue of $110,238,000. And if nobody has any questions, I'll move on to development tax. There was a large apartment complex permitted in Murfreesboro this month, so our development tax revenue was $792,000. If nobody has any questions on that, I've got the nice colorful report that you've got in front of you. This is our zoning enforcement report, and the reason I did it like this month was because I wanted to put in a little bit of description so that you guys can better understand what our zoning enforcement department and what our folks do, what the different inspections are, how we, how they're spread out, what types of inspections we're seeing on a monthly basis. So we're going to try and, I put a description of each of the different types of inspections that we have, and I've run through that real quick, and if you have any questions on that, I'd be glad to answer those. Our zoning enforcement folks stay busy. When they're not, I have 3 inspectors, and when they're not out on the road doing inspections, they're doing a lot of paperwork, a lot of data entry. We document a lot of stuff for zoning enforcement, so there's a lot of paperwork and telephone calls and research and deed researches and property research and stuff that goes along with property maintenance. So
The noise issue in the major subdivisions, was that related to fireworks? Or do you know?
no, it was not. And not excessive noise within a major subdivision. Our noise ordinance only applies to major subdivisions. That's why I put that in there. So it just wasn't necessarily fireworks. It could have been anything.
318 calls or issues and 2 citations and 3 court cases. So large majority,
A lot of
people
them
respond.
we're able to get resolved. We leave a notice on the first visit. We try to call them. We try to make contact with the homeowner. If we can't, then a letter goes out about 7 days later, and then they've got 20 days to abate the situation then before a citation is issued. And typically in that 30 days, that first 7 days and then the 20, we're having a really good result at getting these guys, getting them cleaned up and getting them fixed. So a lot of persistence and a lot of communication between our inspectors and the homeowners, for sure.
Well, I'll move that we approve the report.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
I was gonna give that to Trish. Unless you need this.
No, I can do another one. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Planning. And engineer.
Evening, everybody. Everybody's doing well today. All right. On the planning report today, we do have a couple of the reports for the available lot inventory. We do have one for July as well as June. I'll concentrate really more on the one in July. Suffice it to say that the trend is still, we're still seeing between 600 and 700 available lots, again, recorded lots on the ground, or somebody could pull a building permit today if they wanted to. Well, we're closed now, but tomorrow, if they wanted to come in and pull a building permit, they could. That number has trended up a little bit over the last few months, not so much because we're seeing a reduction in the amount of building permits, really more than we're starting to see some of the existing subdivision sections that have been approved being recorded. For instance, this past month in July, right toward the end of the month, 2 subdivision sections were recorded that added 50 lots to the inventory. I would expect to see those start seeing building permits being issued on them over in this month and even the next following months. So that's really the reason we're seeing the sudden increase over the last few months. So again, I don't think it's so much because of the building permits coming down. It's really more just we're finally starting to see some of these sections be recorded. So if there's no questions on that, I'll move into the rezoning report. We do have 3 rezoning requests for you to consider at the meeting next week. The first is for property, and actually there's 2 of them that are located right next to each other, but the first is located on Sulphur Springs Road right near the interchange with Interstate 840. It's located immediately to the west of the existing Dollar General on Leanna Road. The applicant is asking for this property to be rezoned commercial services, which is similar to the zoning that's been requested for several other properties in that area. They'd like to demolish the existing structures on the property and then build a retail and/or office space on the property in its place. You'll see a concept plan that's been included with your agenda pack. It's kind of giving you an idea of what the applicant is proposing. I will say that is just conceptual. They'll have to go through a site plan review process. Quite frankly, the way it's presented right now probably wouldn't meet lot coverage requirements and other things, so they would have to kind of scale back on what they're doing. But that gives you an idea of what they want to do with that. Just for a little bit of history on this property, a portion of this property, about a half an acre, right at the front of the property was zoned commercial from agricultural back in 1973. The half acre was the site of an old market. The building is still there. The balance of the property was zoned agricultural until it was zoned R15 under the previous zoning resolution. When we came under the new ordinance back in 2013, the whole property was zoned RM due to the fact that that store had been unoccupied for a number of years. Any grandfathering status that that particular store had, it's been long lost. It's to the point where it's been inactive and not used for so long, it's lost any grandfathering status. The biggest issue that was really discussed on this, and property that we'll talk about in a minute to the west, really had to do with traffic at that intersection. You're probably familiar with that intersection, Sulphur Springs Road, Leanna Road, where it comes in there. It's kind of an awkward intersection. Improvements have been made to the striping of that intersection, but it's still deficient in its design. So we've spoken with the applicant of this, as well as the developer of the property to the west of that, in regards to the possibility of shared access. We have seen a site plan for the property to the west, and again, I'll go into that more in just a little bit, but that's something that we would like to see is shared access between this, try to make that intersection a little bit better than it is right now. Over time, that is slated to be widened to a 5-lane cross section, probably with some realignment, and that's not anything that's imminent, but in time that should hopefully work itself out, but just for a little bit of information on that. But the Planning Commission did recommend approval of that particular application by a unanimous vote. The second property is located along John Bright Highway and in Double Springs Road. This property is actually currently zoned agricultural residential, immediately adjacent to property that was zoned commercial general just within the last year. The applicant has provided a concept plan, again, it's on your iPads, that calls for a possibility of a 40,000 square foot building and parking area. He'd like to do some sort of an event venue retreat, something to that effect on the property. Those are classified as minimal impact facilities and are only require a special exception, from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So if he went forward with that plan, then he would have to go to the BZA for that. There is an existing single family structure on this property. Even if this property is zoned CG, commercial general, it would render the use as non-conforming, but the use can continue. It can continue as long as it is not discontinued for longer than 30 months, or if the property is redeveloped. If the property is redeveloped, it would lose its grandfathering status at that point. Commercial zoning is within the city of Murfreesboro, is located about 700 feet to the west of the property. Again, the property immediately adjacent to it and property across the street, directly across the street, was also zoned commercial general in the county. There wasn't much discussion on this item at the Planning Commission's meeting. Following the public hearing, they did recommend approval, again by a unanimous vote. The third public hearing is back on Sulphur Springs Road. It's actually adjacent to the west of the property we talked about just a minute ago. The portion of the subject property was zoned commercial services by the Board of Commissioners back in December of last year. Since that time, I referenced the site plan that was submitted to our office. It's still under review, has not been approved yet at the Planning Commission. The convenience center property does remain, well, I'm sorry, let me back up here. The problem with the site plan that we found was that the area, only a portion of that property was actually rezoned originally. When the site plan came in, it turns out a portion of the property that the applicant wants to sell for the convenience market is still zoned residential. The area that they rezoned was not the actual area that they were planning to sell to the applicant for the convenience market. So essentially what they're doing is, when you look at the map and the diagram that's in your agenda material, really explains it a lot better than what I could. Essentially, they're taking a portion of that property that's zoned RM and they're zoning it to commercial services, and then there's a portion of the property that's zoned to commercial services that they're rezoning back to RM. They're basically swapping some area. It's not a perfect swap. They're zoning a total of 2.32 acres to commercial services. That's including the area that's already zoned. But then they're zoning about 1.27 acres back from commercial services to RM. And like I said, this chart, or this diagram here, really depicts it the best. This area here is what's zoned residential, and this is being zoned commercial. This is the area being zoned commercial that's going back to residential. That's really all they're doing on this application. Everything else on this is remain the same. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions on any of these zoning requests.
What was the motive to keep residential? This seems like a commercial node right there. I'm kind of surprised they didn't just...
Well, I think honestly, it's just, this is the only area that they're willing to sell right now, and they're not really sure what the rest of the plans are for the property. So rather than have it zoned commercial, they just want to leave it zoned residential. Plus, there was some concern from the one neighbor in particular spoke.
Timberland or timber...
Right, they spoke in regards to how much space was going to be between there. So, I mean, this just provides a little bit extra buffer area in my mind.
It was 11-0.
I believe it was unanimous. I believe everybody was there that night. Sir. Let's see. Yes, sir. Let me go.
It looks more imminent. They've already got a professional site plan.
Yes, it was submitted, but again, there were some issues. The biggest issue, the reason we took it off the agenda in the first place was because of the zoning issue. But there's also questions on the access, and so we've already asked them to look into that. They've already created the property via plat, and they've included a cross-access easement on that east side to help with that. So that's something we're going to pursue when we see a revision.
So our approval is just the rezoning, and then the site plan will come through.
Correct.
At a future date.
That's correct.
I make a motion to, if I can bundle the three, and of course open up for discussion, make a motion to approve the report, forward it to the full commission.
Second.
Need a second. All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Traveling waste landfill.
Good evening, how are y'all?
All right, back
All
here.
right.
Y'all ready to talk a little trash? Oh, elections are over, never mind, we don't have to talk trash.
We can.
Of course, first is the landfill report. You can see there's not a world of activity there. We're still getting a lot of free service in where the residents are coming in with their brush. And we do to get some commercial stuff. We're still not taking any demolition, construction debris. Probably will not. We're in the process now of working on some side slopes and some things like that. And then we've still got to build our berm for our leachate collection. that's probably gonna get pretty expensive on us, but something that needs to be done just for the safety of the environmental safety. Any questions on the landfill?
The landfill, the brush and all, that's residents of Rutherford County, no out-of-county dumping brush.
The out-of-county can come dump brush, but they have to pay for it.
Have to pay, okay. So it's just a free service for county residents,
Up to 1 ton. After you bring in over a ton, then you pay as well.
but no commercial or,
No commercial gets free. Now, the highway department, if they're take down a tree out there in that area somewhere, they'll bring it to us. We don't charge them.
but landscapers have to pay.
Yes. There you go, the convenience center report. Convenience center / recycle centers have stayed busy. Normally in the past, we'll get busy at Christmas time, and toward the end of January, we'll slow down from Christmas, and we're a little bit slow until spring break. Then we'll slow back down through the summer a little bit. During the middle of the summer, we'll pick back up, and then we'll fall back down, and shortly after Thanksgiving, we'll pick back up and run through Christmas again. We have not slowed down. It has stayed extremely busy. We've been short-handed, but in the last 6 weeks, got 2 drivers on the street, 2 new drivers. Interviewed another one today. Been hired center attendants. If I'm extremely lucky, by the end of this week, we will be fully staffed for the first time since I've been here. But we've intentionally not been fully staffed, because we could afford not to fill some of those positions.
Do they have to have a CDL?
The drivers do, yeah.
Drivers do?
So we've been fortunate on that, and then of course a lot of my counterparts in other counties are, you get the people to apply. I don't know, we hadn't had them, but we're getting them now. Part of it is through this new budget cycle with a pay increase, and a pretty good one for the drivers, so that helped out quite a bit. Our biggest struggle right now is with recycling. If y'all remember, several months ago we were doing budget amendments to cover cost to recycle. Getting charged $150 a ton for contaminated recycle loads. And we had 1 load, we dumped it in May, got the bill in June, was $170 to recycle a load of single stream from the schools. So we've done some retraining with the convenience center attendants and getting them to talk to the residents. One center Sunday, actually, when they first did it, I didn't find out about it till later, and I thought that was not the right thing to do, but it worked. When they got there early Sunday morning, they got into the plastic container and pulled out everything that was not supposed to be in there and put it in front of the container.
Wow.
And then when Mr. Cush would walk up, if you got anything that looks like this, put it in the trash.
That's cool.
So just trying to get that messaging out. The schools recycling, and what they call contamination is if you use a lot of water bottles and you drink your water, you can put the lid back on it or not, you can crush it or leave it whole, doesn't make any difference, and you put it in a trash bag and you put it in our container still in that trash bag, that is contamination. And the way they're doing it is they've got a guy that sits there when we're dumping and looks at the load, and he makes an estimate of, well, it's 20% contaminated or 100%, whatever his estimate is that percentage of the tonnage is what we get charged for. So the last 6 loads of single stream from the schools went to the landfill. 2 weeks before that, the Thursday loads went to the landfill. Part of that was because there was actually trash and furniture, that type of stuff, obvious stuff in it, and then part of it was because of the bagging. And we've had, I think it's 8 loads of glass and 15 loads of plastic that's been landfilled, just to avoid that cost. And what we're doing with it is we let the drivers look. And the drivers are in and out of the center just about almost every day. So they'll kind of peek at it and see what it looks like as it's filling up, because if it's on the bottom, you won't be able to see it. And the driver makes the determination of whether or not it needs to go to landfill, or if it can go to be recycled. And then once they dump it, they try to take a picture of it just to show this is what I thought I saw. And then, it's a judgment call. And sometimes you make a mistake. So we've taken loads up there that we thought that was good and they weren't. And we wound up taking some loads at the landfill that we thought was terrible, and they weren't near as bad once we got them dumped out. So, but if the general public will help us and not bag that stuff, then that could help us out a lot. We're still recycling as much as we can, but it's that cost factor. You know, it's for a load of glass, it's about 3 hours round trip. We got to go all the way up near Rivergate Mall. And for a load of plastic, depending on where you're coming from, is anywhere from 1.5 hours to 2 hours. You know, that's the trucking cost plus the disposal fee if you have to pay it. Of course, they don't pay us anything for it. So that's where we are on that. Met with the new school board superintendent, super nice guy, and kind of explained the trash situation to him. Of course, that was his first full week. I'm sure he had 1 or 2 other things to do besides talking to me. But we'll revisit that. But he understood what I was talking about. I mean, it was really a good meeting. The other thing that we're going to deal with, and y'all may get some phone calls, is there's 3 county elementary schools that started a new feeding program, feeding in the classroom. And we got a call from an email, not a call from one of those schools. Their normal trash service this past school year was 2 8 yards going twice a week. And they requested to have 3 8 yards going 3 times a week. And we just can't do that. So they're going to have to figure out a better way to do it. And then they're going to have to start recycling better. Throughout the summer, the loads of trash from the schools had almost as much recycled material in them as the recycle had. So it's going to be a messaging struggle. Of course, Hannah left us and went to Williamson County, our public media specialist. Great job for her. Hated we lost her, but it's a good for her. So we've got 16 applicants. Haven't had a chance to interview any of those yet. But hopefully out of those 16, we'll find a good replacement for her. And then on top of that, we've got several meetings and things that we've been attending. Maybe you want to see what you want to do with the report, then we'll see.
Stepping back to the school recycling, now is this something that your children are going to have to do, or the custodians do, or at what point is it messed up?
When I was talking to Mr. Spurlock, I used to teach at Smyrna High School, and I would stay there late at night, and there was a lady that cleaned that hallway, and she would work her way. Mine was the last room down the hall. So she'd work her way down the hallway. She was pushing a cart with all of her equipment, her tools, her mops, and her brooms, and all that kind of stuff, and pulling a 30-gallon trash can on wheels. So if that lady is still doing that same thing, then they're not recycling because they only have a trash can to put it in. Yeah. So a lot of it depends on who is actually taking the stuff and disposing of it. Some of the schools that have the students that do it, or some organization within the school, they have a really good success rate. Then we've got some that's just not very good at it. But a lot of it is being willing to, I guess. One of the trash driver was talking to one of the cafeteria ladies this week. They've already started throwing away a lot of stuff, and he told her that, you're going to have to quit using so many paper plates. She said, well, it's cheaper on her to use the paper plates than it is to wash everything. So it's some of those struggles that we're going to have to work through, try to get everybody on board on the situation. And the conversation I had with Mr. Spurlock is, right now we've got one trash truck that runs 5 days a week, and it's about a 43 to 45-hour work week to get all that trash picked up. We've got one recycle truck that runs 4 days a week because they don't recycle enough to justify putting the truck on the street for the 5th day. And he's running about a 7-hour day. So if the schools want to recycle more, then we've got room on that recycle truck for it. But I don't want to add any more trash. I got a call this morning that one of those schools that's doing the feeding program wanted to add another container. I told him, I said, you've got 3 schools. Not only this one, it's going to be making the same request to more than double their trash service. And he said, well, my question is, can we do it? I said, anything can be done, but here's my suggestion, is all of your high schools have more trash service than they need. They need about 68 cubic yards a week. They've got 96. I said, so if you want more service at these elementary schools, let's take it away from the high schools. And that didn't go over real well, but that's, you know, we're gonna have to look at doing some things such as that. But the big thing would be if they just got a lot of the recycle out of the trash would help a lot. Driver took a picture through the summer. A lot of the schools got new computers. They come in a box about 2.5 inches tall, about a big square. And luckily today they don't use styrofoam packaging. It's cardboard packaging. And the trash dumpster was full of those boxes, one broken down. Of course, it had some trash mixed with it, so we couldn't recycle that box. We had to trash it as well. But that's just the struggle of getting people to understand. Our residents are going to be the same way. You know, we get a lot of phone calls now. You know, I've got this little building debris that I've got, you know, taken down to a pickup truck load. You need to take that to Middlepoint. Is it free? No. For the pickup truck load's about $50.
This handful of applicants that you have yet to go through, will that person be responsible as the liaison between you, the county side, and the public side? Will he or she be part of the training and education side to train the public?
Right. She can, one that we had, Hannah, could actually, she was really good at presenting information and things like that. So she could go to a meeting and explain things, and then she could do all the media releases and all that kind of stuff. She had a really good following, and that's the reason we lost her. She drew attention to herself, and other people started seeing it. So they came to recruit it her way. But there was multiple occasions where the television news channels would call her during the day. You got any news stories? And she always was keeping up with what was going on, not only in our department, but EMA, fire, sheriff department, and PAWS. So if there was something that could be a story, here you go.
Yeah. Okay.
And then she, you know, would, as much as possible, link us to those stories. TDEC really took notice a year ago, November. Our household hazardous waste tripled in collection. A few weeks before that, she put out a media release that 29 house fires in Rutherford County was related to hazardous waste in the house. So TDEC's version was, she scared them into coming. You know, but she's a real sharp young lady, and she'll be really hard to replace.
Do we have some position of some sort that's a recycling person that works for the mayor? Is that position still filled? Or?
Yes, that's a recycle educator coordinator. That's Mimi Kiesling. Talked with her today, actually. She's already gearing up and going into a lot of the schools to do the recycle campaign in the schools. And if the schools will invite her in, she will also work with the custodial staff and the cafeteria staff and helping them to recycle correctly.
So we've got one person already on staff.
We just, when we're ready, we just need to have a big media campaign through multiple channels to educate the public on what needs to happen.
Well, let me refresh y'all's memory, and hopefully y'all are fully aware. Colonel Davidson wanted and thinks the county should have a public information office. And he was pushing real hard to have that position. Well, you know, the way it works in the county, if you don't have a vacant position, then you can't hire anybody. He didn't have one. I had one. So that's the reason solid waste wound up with that position. So the first thing I had her do was sit down and answer the phones, and told her when she gets to the point that she can ever answer every question that somebody asks, then she knows our department. Once she knows our department, she can message for our department. And then she was working with us, she was working with fire department, she dealt with the sheriff department a little bit, EMA, so she was branching out. But the purpose of that position was to eventually become the public information officer for the entire county.
Yeah, but what I'm hearing is she was so good with you, she never branched out into that real, quote, public information officer.
That's correct.
She stayed with you.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
And then this position that we're trying to replace would still be with me.
Yeah.
But they'd still work with some of the other agencies. And then when they started environmental court, is where she was getting ready to. She left before time, but with codes and planning and engineering and some of those others that would be involved in the environmental court. I'll toot her horn since she's not here. If you remember a month ago, there was a news thing about 100 cats taken out of a
Yeah.
travel trailer in Walmart.
Yeah.
Paul's has a media specialist like we do, but theirs was out of town. So Michael Gregory called and said, I need Hannah's help. I said, here. After that, I didn't have a clue what he needed help for, just here. And that's the result of all that media stuff is from her contacts. So and that was her last day at work. So she went out with a bang. And if y'all would suspend the rules and allow me to invite Miss Becky Caldwell up here, we'll give you some more information on stuff that's going on outside the county.
Before you do that, I'll make a motion to approve the report.
Second. And also would make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I could have warned you, but I thought,
Yeah, you kind of
This is Becky Caldwell.
right there.
I've known Becky for quite a while. She was the solid waste director for the city of Franklin, and she worked with Williamson County, and now she's with Greater Nashville Regional Council. And Joey Smith, which I've met him, and I are working with the Greater Nashville region, trying to find a solution for the entire region.
Yeah, it's the challenge of the day. So you all have had probably most of the conversation surrounding landfill. What solutions, what can you do, what are the options? The Greater Nashville Regional Council has embraced that, and not only are we covering the 13 counties of the Nashville region, but we're also looking at the counties just outside the region that touch Rutherford, and we're looking at Murray County, we're looking at Marshall County, we're looking at some of the counties that are actually a little bit outside of our region, simply to say we want to find a solution for everyone. We want to find a solution that's viable. There will be options and recommendations on the table. I think you always have to look at anything from do nothing to what does it look like in a perfect world, and everything in between. One of the things that I have learned a lot about in the past few weeks is that we have a lot of resources in Middle Tennessee. We aren't aware of what is there, so we're starting to identify who needs to be in touch with who as far as communication. The other thing that we're learning is that we are all interested in finding a solution, and there is not a single municipality, whether it be city or county, that can make this happen on its own. They either don't have enough resources or they don't have enough waste volume to make it a viable option. So I think it's going to truly be a team effort, and I think it'll take all of us to have a successful plan and to actually to roll it out and make a big difference and make it a positive change, so that we can look at it not just 5 years from now, but 35 or 40 years from now. That we've made good decisions now, we've done our homework and answered that question for future generations. So that's our goal. In a nutshell.
Are you up for a question, Becky?
Sure.
Okay. So, would the council, your council, are you or is somebody a point person that can help herd all those cats, which would be the cities and the counties, that could get us together in a big room to get these stakeholders together and sit and discuss options and who's in, who's out, how much money you're willing to put up. You know, that's we kind of know where we need to be, and how do we get to the table and get all these people together and discuss this?
Well, that's my challenge,
Okay.
but it's actually
So
it's a good
You're
opportunity.
the one we need to know really well.
It's a good opportunity, and I'll tell you what we've done so far.
Okay.
Back in December, before I accepted the position with the Greater Nashville Regional Council, they actually had what they called a mayor's caucus, and the mayors got together in the region and talked about what are the solutions. Basically, the message is solid waste is the next transportation. Transportation has been a hot topic. It's been something that the region has looked at overall. Lots of options, lots of ideas out there, but solid waste has now become one of those front page topics on a regular basis. So the mayors are together in what we're calling the Mayor's Caucus, and then we also have what Mac, Joey, and the other solid waste directors are part of. Once a month, we convene these folks in a solid waste director roundtable meeting. So we have the solid waste directors from Nashville, from Hickman County, from Murray County, from Williamson County, from City of Franklin, City of Gallatin, Sumner County. We have folks all over this area that are coming to the table as professionals. Bi-County is there as well. Folks that are just coming to the table, and we're starting to have the conversation of this is what we do, this is what we think would work, this is what we have the capacity to handle, this is how we can work together, what we can offer. And that's not so much to say the dollar amount or the plan as far as long term, that's just what do we have right now? Where are we today? And then what can we use beyond that to come up with a plan that's good for everyone in the region.
Who funds Greater Nashville Regional Council?
Who funds it? So it is a group of 13 counties and then several cities within the counties that fund it through, a lot of it's funded through grant money, funded through membership of the counties and the cities as well.
Do you pay into that?
Yes, sir.
Reluctantly. No,
No.
I'm kidding.
I'll go there then.
If I don't solve the problem, then maybe not. And I
Are you the
think,
grant writer as well?
I can, yeah, I can. For solid waste primarily, but I also work with them. I work on the strategic planning in general, but this solid waste is my expertise. So.
Out of those 13 counties that are participating in this, were they all using the Republic landfill?
Not all of them. Like by county, which is Montgomery and Stewart County, they have their own landfill. Sumner County has their own. They had an authority. They had a waste to energy facility, so now they're kind of backing out of that.
They had
Speak to that.
obsolete.
Yeah. When the new air regulations and the filtration and for all the pollution and all that, they shut theirs down.
And it, overall, it looks like obviously not everyone's gonna agree. I think we have to have recommendations. I think everyone has to decide what's best for their community, what's best for their county. Overall, I would hope that we had something that everyone could appreciate and value, and that we're not all just solely depending on a landfill, the same landfill, for everyone to just kind of repeat history.
And we hope we're not depending on that either.
Yeah.
That's not our plan. I
No.
don't think that's our plan.
Do y'all have access to the report we did? We did a consultation, we did a report.
And working on another one that we will have a meeting on the 24th. They'll be here for their second round of, all right, we've made these decisions, so let's move forward with, other possibilities. That'll be on the 24th.
Is Becky looped into that? Or is that?
She knows some about it. She's
What
not
was
actually a
she?
part of it, but we can get her involved. And to answer Steve's question a little more, going north from us, and that's kind of where the region heads. Wilson County's trash goes to Smith County. Robertson,
Going up to Kentucky.
transfer station. Most all the counties.
Did you say Wilson County?
Wilson County goes to,
They don't use their own landfill?
their landfill is construction demolition. The big one that's been permitted, it's never been opened. But most all of the counties north of us, with the exception of Montgomery and Stewart, that's the Bi-County, they have a landfill there that they're having authority together, but everybody else uses transfer stations. And most of the ones north of Davison go somewhere other than here. Is that what you was asking? Okay. Also, Joey and I meet with TDEC is involved in this as well. They have us meetings with they call it the top 5. It's the top 5 largest counties in the state, and we meet about quarterly to talk about challenges and things that the 5 of us experience. Which reminds me, we got a grant to go through too. Glad that came out.
We're putting together an authority, Max, leading that charge. Or
Looking at the possibility.
looking at the possibility of authority. And are you seeing that in other counties, and can that, I mean, I'm just thinking about redundancies where we can collaborate. We've got a regional thing going, we're doing a two-county thing or a two-entity thing, can we do that? That's
Well,
just,
Becky and I've talked about that a little.
Yeah, we have. And so here's from the outside looking in and having been around this industry for a while. Our state allowed for each county in the state to become its own planning region. So right now we have several counties that sit by themselves as a region, as a planning board. Looking at that picture and then starting to talk about a regional authority, if Rutherford County creates a regional authority and Davidson County creates a regional authority, there would have to be clear distinction as to what those responsibilities were. Simply to say, if we start to look at a regional authority, then where does the Rutherford County or Davidson County authority fit under the umbrella of a regional authority? And there are rules and laws versus the planning board and the authority, but I'm not sure there's a spot for two-layer authority. That's something I'm working with TDEC on. But the goal would be ultimately to the collaboration in the regional piece. Maybe there is a solid waste authority that's regional, that has a group of people from each community that sit on a board that make decisions for that board. At no point do I ever think somebody at that level needs to make a decision about what color the uniforms are, what type of truck they're driving, or how many employees they need. But you make the decisions based on if a waste to energy facility is the answer, how do we fund that? How do we manage that? How do we look at that from an authority standpoint overall for the entire region? And then there is a clear line where the authority has this responsibility, and then the planning board has this responsibility, or the planning region has this responsibility. And I think there can be a clear line. It just has to, again, there just has to be clarity.
Now, our
To
region
identify.
is Rutherford, Cannon, Coffee, and Warren counties. The four of us are together in one region.
And even though the other three counties are not in the GNRC region, from a GNRC standpoint, we are looking at those other three counties because they're part of your all's region as a planning board.
Becky, are any counties or regions in the state working with P3, private-public partnership on their landfills?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Be glad to have that conversation.
Yeah. We probably will at some time, just to see if that's an option.
Yeah, and I think we have to look at all the options. I don't think there's any one, there are lots of moving parts in this industry. I don't think there's any one answer. I don't think there's any one waste stream that we're going to find a single answer for. I think it's based on community, it's based on people, it's based on geography, it's based on resources. I think we ought to look at everything overall. And that's why our regional approach makes good sense.
Perfect.
how long is your position?
This position has been there for many years. I don't know would Phil Armour have been here? Okay, so Phil Armour used to hold this position several years ago. There were a few people in transition, and then I was actually hired back in the spring to resume those responsibilities, but also write the first regional solid waste master plan for the state.
So that's progress.
Yes.
If we want to educate ourselves on some of that information, can we find that on, is there a website?
We do have a website, but I'll be glad to give you my contact information.
Okay.
Be glad to talk to you and listen and hear your ideas as well, because I think it takes all of us.
Yeah.
And if you've got questions, there's going to be someone else with those same questions.
Part of what the solid waste roundtable is challenged to do is try to come up with some possible solutions that can eventually go back to the mayor's caucus. And then there's other roundtables other than solid waste. It's a lot of different facets into it.
So we've got the mayors, and we have the solid waste directors, and then we have this piece that we're using. It's basically experts in the field of whatever area they're in. So if there are composters out there, where I'm actually going out and speaking with them, how do you do this? What do you do? Let me tour your site. What are you thinking for the future? What are your thoughts? Or what have you tried that didn't work? So those are the conversations I'm out having in the area with whether it's private, small business, private companies that have diversified into other areas. So those are the conversations that I'm having on the other, on that third tier of what we're doing.
Are you talking to composters on a large scale, such as Sevier County and
Yes.
that's a real deal?
Absolutely.
and I apologize for coming in late to this meeting. Did you mention anything to our group about an upcoming road trip that Mayor-elect Ketron wants?
I've not actually talked with the mayor-elect yet, but I heard him make that statement. I don't know when he was there last. Joey and I, when we left the Show of the South 3 years ago, that was in Gatlinburg. So we left on Friday morning, so we went by there to visit. At that time, it was a large odor issue.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's been corrected. or
Waste
not.
energy or what? What was the?
At that time, it was just composting.
Yeah.
And
Oh, this is very well.
Yeah. And now they're working, last I heard, you may know more about it, Becky, they were working toward a waste to energy system to actually use that compost as a fuel source.
That was the last thing I heard. I don't know.
And I don't know
that-
what
yeah.
stage they're in.
I don't know either. I can find out.
The mayor-elect is wanting to schedule a group of us to go out, if possible, in September. Vicky's trying to schedule a bus, but for us to go out and just take a look and tour that facility and see if that's something we want to look at. So I know he'll be talking to Mac about that. And Becky, if you can snag a ride, and if you wanted to, maybe you can go too. But
I'll be glad to go.
that being said, maybe you, Mac, or the two of you could give us some education prior to that bus trip on what we might see and what that whole system is about.
Mhm.
So we'll be better informed and maybe can ask some intelligent questions when we're there, those people. So we're not just show up and not say, hey, that looks neat. What is that?
Well, and I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
I think, and I think when we get folks that are either, deal with it every day in some facet of the industry, or a resident that's just interested in it, where does it go? What does it look like? I think that's a great team, because you have the person that can possibly offer the answers, but you also have the questions. And you mix those two together and you get some really good feedback, and you get some really good progress as far as some good, good opportunity to solve a problem, whatever the problem is.
And Mac, I think you even mentioned to me that maybe there may be some nitrate issues in that final product of that compost that might be detrimental to the plants and trees that it's supposed to go around.
Right.
Maybe burn some of
Their
those out.
process has been, of course, it's been 3 years since I've been up there, so it may have changed, but it's Sevier County and the cities, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, and Sevierville are in together on this. So they're dependent, like we are. We're dependent on our residents to do what we ask to do, and it doesn't always work that way. So the residents are supposed to recycle all the recycled commodities and then throw the trash away. So it's the food waste and the trash and the sewer sludge that's been mixed together, and it goes through a big trommel for 2 or 3 or 4 days, and then when it comes out, it's beginning to compost and it has to go cure some more. The odor, I think, and this is my personal opinion, was the sewer sludge. And the lady there told us if you took a wheelbarrow of it and dumped it out in the yard this afternoon, when you come back the next morning, all around it's dead with all the ammonia and the nitrogen, high concentration. So it's intended to be land applied, but you'd have to put it on very sparsely or you'd kill everything you applied it to.
And that's something else we have to consider, is the sludge
Mhm.
in the whole process, simply because it's part of what's going to a landfill at this point.
Right.
And a lot of municipalities manage a wastewater treatment plant as well.
There's so much to know.
It all just kind of works together. But I'm glad to help you any way I can.
Okay. We'll accept your offer.
But she recently moved and chose not to move to Rutherford County.
What?
She's just across the county line.
Yeah, I'm just across the county line. It was what is closest to Nashville. It's actually strategically located in the middle of the region.
We've got a grant we need to get information or a permission to apply for. It's the TDEX Recycle Rebate Grant. And it goes to the top 5 counties, but we still have to apply for it. So we need to get permission to apply for that. And of course, it's a 50-50 match. and the city of Murfreesboro and us received money from that. Last year, Murfreesboro did not take their money, so if they choose not to take their money, it rolls into us. And that's what happened last year. And
We still have to match the greater amount though. Is that?
yes. And what we use the grant money for is, it costs us to recycle electronics. It's costing us to recycle glass and plastic. And then we have GVB as a contractor for us, so we use that money to help pay for those things. Trying to see here how much it is for us. It's,
Say, is it
I think, yes.
31,493?
Right.
That's the eligibility to us?
Mhm.
That's on page 2 of 9 for those.
I don't have that one. Is it in your report?
Yeah, it's at the.
Oh, gotcha.
It's at the end. It's that Tennessee, it's TDEC application summary.
So collectively, it's a little over 50,000 between the two of us. And it's the amount of money is divided between the 5 counties based on population.
Okay. So if in 2018 or whenever this calendar year is, if Murfreesboro elects not to take their portion, we could have access to the whole $50,000.
Right.
And so we would have to match $50,000 to that.
That's correct.
Okay.
But we're already spending that money anyway, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
When we first started getting it, we were, several years ago, we bought some recycled containers. We bought a tow motor for Haley Road, and we used those funds for that. And then we didn't really need any containers, any physical purchases, so we were using the salaries from the people that worked there. And they allowed us to do that, but last year they told us that they didn't want to pay for salaries. They wanted us to do something else with it. So we spend money to recycle, so we can spend it that way.
if you need a motion, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the grant request.
Second.
And execution by appropriate officials, if received.
Why, certainly.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
And some more good news, I told you we're hiring people. I'm good with good news. Got a phone call last week. Our roll-off truck that we ordered last budget year should be here in the middle of this week. And in this year's budget was for 2 roll-off trucks. So when we put it out for bid, we let them know there's a possibility of 1 truck this budget year, 2 next year. So I told him, we've got them budgeted, I need to go ahead and place the orders. He said, give me the purchase orders. So we applied and got the purchase orders. And when I sent those to him, he said, that's all I needed. I said, so you're going to order a truck? He said, one of them's already here, and the other one's already on its way. They'd already ordered the trucks, hoping. And I asked him, I said, what happened if it wouldn't be, we wouldn't have the money? He said, the Mack truck and them had agreed that if they ordered one and couldn't sell it, they would put it on the backyard and sell it as a new truck that's ready to go. So hopefully by the end of September, we'll have all 3 new trucks.
That is good news. With your new drivers.
Yes, they won't get the new truck.
Yeah, no, naturally.
They'll get hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
Anything else?